Where the Wild Things Are is a 2009 adaptation of the beloved children's book directed by Spike Jonze. The book has become a sort of gold standard for picture books, and so it was something of a risk for anyone to attempt to adapt the minimal and profound story into a feature-length film. Luckily, I think the film does the book justice, and I would like to review the movie in the hopes of finding out why. Within the first 20 minutes of the film, the set is staged for everything the viewer is going to expect. Max, a neglected boy on the verge of adolescence, is so desperate for attention and for company that he overreaches and finds himself causing great harm. When he runs away to a fantastical land filled with the wild things, done in a combination of animatronic costume and CGI, they make him their king, and Max begins to play out all the fantasies he has accumulated in his creative mind. As the film goes along, conflicts between Max and the wild things, as well as between each other, make his rule difficult. And it is through these interactions that we uncover a great deal about Max, as well as the world, when brought to this childlike stage. Though the movie is an adaptation of a picture book, the tone of the movie flutters between erratic play and dour ennui, and as such is fitting for adults as well. The bridge between these two is a standout screenplay, which manages both to temper high-intensity moments with a bit of grounding, and manages to lift the film with levity out of what could be a downward spiral. The repetition of some of the themes, not to mention of choice lines, works wonders in presenting information in a colored light, thus giving our character Max plenty to grow up on in this coming-of-age tale. Max leaves and returns, and does so in a way that feels like it fills the niche of adventure we might crave from a story like this. It's not perfect. The high contrast of the film between light and dark, and the desaturated color palette, may help to blend in the wild things with their environment a little more readily, but it can wash out or blanch out even the best of setups, which I had with a hard copy of the film on Blu-ray, and sometimes I was lost as to the subject of the shot. But the story is so richly and densely devised that even the mention of benign words like teeth are used with resonance in a story that Max tells his mother, and when he bites his mother, he sees these strange behaviors mirrored to him and the wild things he projects in this fantastical world. There are few films resolutely for adults that manage to pay this kind of attention. A coherence of a 4 out of 5 makes sense. Where the Wild Things Are is a film about extremes, so luckily the actor portraying Max is able to keep the excitement at a fever pitch when necessary. The wild things themselves are an incredible sight to behold, as their facial features register emotion strongly, while their bodies simultaneously feel light and pliable, as well as robust and sturdy. There are several moments in this film when action takes center stage, and one cannot help but marvel at how they were able to pull it off. There are 2 moments when characters scream, "You're out of control," and each time it feels warranted, and this sort of bookending of themes across the film occurs again and again to great effect. What does not quite hold up so well is the music choice, where the Wild Things Are relies on the sensibilities of millennial, quirky, singer-songwriter music of the late 2000s and early 2010s. Music that features acoustic guitar and piano, as well as intimate lyrical singing that feels a little too close to the emotion at hand, producing something squeamish in me as I was watching. It's not terrible, but music is used so often in moments of transition from one scene to the next, that it can sometimes rob scenes of their tension. Like I've mentioned before, the ecstatic highs and soporific lows are mitigated by the screenplay, which can also sometimes work against this intensity of effect, unlike certain genre films which lean into heavily the material. The Where the Wild Things Are is likely as close as one can get into children's story without overstimulating them or scaring them. There are still plenty of moments that leave the viewer with plenty to stew over about childhood's past and present. A 3 out of 5 for intensity of effect as a result. At certain moments, Where the Wild Things Are does transcend its own context to produce some incredibly resonating moments. I would even go so far as to say that it asks some pretty existential questions in microcosm about believing in a religion, or understanding the history of monarchical leadership. We get a metaphorized understanding of cliques, if done so in a bold and unsubtle way, but we equally have a boiled-down script that conveys what might happen when an individual or group enters a kind of hysteria. Max realizes some deep problems of being a leader. For example, when he tells Carol that eventually the sun will die out, casting Earth in a permanent darkness. Max learned this at school, but when he hears his own phrase coming out of Carol's mouth in the middle of the night, Max learns that certain stressors in our lives can make us pervasively latch on to other fears lying in orbit, regardless of whether they have any merit. This is a deep psychological underpinning of cognitive behavioral therapy, and as such, it's surprising to find it in a film supposedly for children. I think that the complexity of the film, disguised in such a way, is its predominant feature, one that upholds the power of the incredible short original picture book story quite well. Each archetype we might see in life is represented in the Wild Things, from pessimists and runts of the litter who are overlooked, to fiery leaders and their cool rivals who join other friend groups and brag about how cool they are. We have quiet ones and loyal ones, and those who will do anything to mitigate conflict. The microcosm that results is a testbed for a child to play around in and get lost in. I think that the complexity stands at a 4 out of 5. There are plenty of films that have a child escape into a fantasy that, strangely, bears some parallels to their own plight. Whether it is in an incredibly cheesy film like Warriors of Virtue from 1997, or from something slightly less cheesy but yet no less inventive, like The Never-Ending Story, Where the Wild Things Are settles into that canon quite well. It is an adaptation of one of the most famous picture books of all time, and the art design comes sometimes directly from it. I don't think anything is going to carry the sort of weight that Guillermo del Toro's 2006's Pan's Labyrinth did, as that film is so inventive and beautiful, not to mention incredibly somber, that the evocations really go there in a way that Where the Wild Things Are sort of can't and holds back. Another great foil is the wild and inventive Labyrinth from 1986, a surreal film that puts the far more grounded film we are speaking of today into something more akin to a stage play. I think that the film was likely limited by the form, and while it detracts from originality, I think the film was able to carve out for itself a place that gave young boys something to consider when they lose their temper. A 3 out of 5 for originality. A 3.5 out of 5 combined score for Where the Wild Things Are is fitting as a great addition to the genre of childhood film experiences without demanding itself to be a mainstay in the same way as other films. While the other films may work better as being solely children's films for children to watch and rewatch endlessly, Where the Wild Things Are is a resolutely serious attempt to bring parent and child into the same theater. I think the end result is slightly compromised, yet still compelling. Thanks for watching.